be able to sort of unveil this new stuff. So let's move forward. So first thing I want to talk about Fable. Now I love Fable, I love the land, I love the progression that we've made with Fable. I'm proud of the success of Fable 1, I'm proud of the success of Fable 2. You know, I think you can see this ambition that we had to sort of drive this forward. My line to you press guys still haunts me of the greatest role-playing game of all time. We're still striving to do that, and it's very important for us that we make those ambitious steps. So we've got the team still together, and they're still working on Fable. And you know, you've seen over the past year, you've seen a number of PDLCs with Not Whole Island and See the Future. See the Future, there's a few little clues in there about what's happening next. But, you know, I'm still greedy and we're still innovating, and I've got a little bit of an announcement about Fable 2. And what that is, let's just move forward, is something new called Fable episodic. Now, if you think of Fable, how many people in this room, by the way, played Fable 2? Okay, quite a few, that's good. So you think of Fable 2, when we designed the story and the drama of Fable 2, we kind of broke it down into 5 different chapters. The first of those chapters was when you went through childhood and you came out the other side and you went into this gypsy camp and you were kind of a bit free, and then you found yourself to be a hero and you took on your first real big battle. That's what we call Chapter 1. And what we're doing with Chapter 1, as from September the 29th, we are going to be giving these 5 episodes, episode 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, we'll be releasing those. You'll be able to download the first episode completely free. And here's the thing that really excites me as a designer. If I give something away free, if I give this first episode free, when you're in game and you're fighting Thag and you get to the end of the Thag battle and you kind of release the slaves, wouldn't it be great to then come up and say, hey, are you enjoying this? If you want to continue playing, then you can spend a few more points and download the next episode. Maybe you're not quite sure yet whether you want to buy the whole thing, or you can buy the whole thing. Now I think as a designer this is really exciting. Keeping a player in game, not requiring them to go out of the game and check online and wait for new things to come. I think that's very important. And for me, I think it starts to show an interesting way that we can develop our experiences. So we're doing all this, and as I said, we're releasing this on September the 29th. You'll be able to download this. This is fully compatible with the other things that you can buy in the Fable world, with Not Whole Island, and with See the Future. And, I think it's another brave step that we took. And my hope is that the people who thought, role-playing games are not for me, might just try something that's free. So that's one of those announcements, but let's move on a little bit, and let's move on to talk about something else. So we move to the next slide. I want to talk about, it's a bit dramatic, they did this for me, so I could reveal this, it's working. Now of course we're developing Fable 3, we would be crazy, we'd be insane not to develop Fable 3. But here's the thing, here's the problem. The third child is always the problem child, whether it be human beings or games. They're the problems, especially a game that comes out the second iteration on the platform. I've played many, many games where, the third in the series tends to be a little bit of a lull. There's not so much innovation in the game anymore. You kind of get bored of playing the character. You get bored of the world. And we've really thought about this. So when we thought about Fable 3, we started thinking about some of those challenges. Now, we want people to expect the unexpected. I want the fans, and indeed you, the press, to say to me, oi, you should clean up this from Fable 2 and clean up that and give us more of this and more of that, but I really want you to say, okay, give us something new, give us something fresh and something different. And there's two ways that we can do that. The first way is that we can give you new game mechanics. And I think in Fable 2, we made a really good step forward with the dog. We made a really good step forward with things like the breadcrumb trail, the one-button combat, the no death in battles. Well, we're not going to stop there. What we were actually going to do is we're going to still question some of the foundation stones. And one of those foundation stones I'm going to tease you with, because you've got to try and guess what it is. I think there is something fundamentally wrong with games like Fable, with role-playing games. Some fundamental mechanic which is insidiously built into the game, and it's been there since the early 80s when we first started playing role-playing games. And I'd like to take that foundation stone and throw it away. I'm going to tell you what it is today, but I am going to set it as a puzzle for everybody, what that big fundamental foundation stone is. The other thing is that we have to be bold with the story and the drama. And that's really, today, what I really want to focus on. How can we totally surprise you with the story and the drama? So let's move on to that. And let's just see where we are with the Fable story. So Fable 1, you were one of many heroes. You were a hero in a guild of heroes, and there were other heroes in the Albion world who, challenged you and who were as good as you and some even better than you. That's pretty good. Fable 2, we moved it on 500 years. You were one of many heroes. Not one of many heroes anymore, you were the only hero. And one of your jobs was to bring other heroes together. The age of heroes was kind of dying out. So the question is, what can we do with Fable 3? How can we take that big step forward? How can we take it that big step forward in the story? And I think, I'd like to pose this question. For me, as a games designer, it's all about power, about you feeling powerful. So I just want to show you this campaign that we put out on the web about 7 days ago. We put a number of iconic figures from history. And in fact, history is a great inspiration. And I want to just show you this little clip from Fable 3, Fable 3 teaser. Let's see what you think.
The kingdom of Albion is changing. The land needs a ruler. King or queen, cherished leader or ruthless tyrant, pure or corrupted. That future has not yet been written. The race for the crown has begun.
Okay, so that is what you're going to become in Fable 3. You are going to become the ruler of the whole of Albion. You've played in this land from Fable 1. You've been one of many heroes, as I said. In Fable 2, you became, a very important hero. Well, this time, why not rule Albion? Why not be that king or that queen? Why don't we make a game which is so different to Fable 2, where your consequences and your judgments affect not the people around you, but the whole of your land? That starts being this bold step that I was talking about. I want players to feel and experience what it's like to be a ruler. And this is still true in today's world now. I think if you look at our iconic leaders, whether it be Obama Gordon Brown in England, Tony Blair or Margaret Thatcher, or some of the revolutionaries of that, even Che Guevara and Abraham Lincoln, and I think history of the world of the evolution of mankind is all based around these iconic leaders. I want you to feel that power when you're playing Fable 3. That for me is a really bold step. And being able to sort of give you the feeling where you can say, I'm gonna eradicate poverty. I'm gonna take all this money, all this gold. You can actually walk into your treasure rooms. I'm gonna take all this gold. I'm gonna feed everybody. That's what I want you. Those are the choices and consequences I want. I want you to be able to also think, no, I'm going to keep all this myself. I'm going to hoard it and keep it. I don't care about the poor. I'll tax them harder. I'll rule them harder. I'll be more of a tyrant. And those choices and consequences end up being really big. And that's starting to be very important. Let's not forget you've got a family as well. You've got a king or a queen sitting at your side, and maybe they're going to be pushing you in certain directions. And when you have a look at this shot, this concept shot, and start looking at it, are you going to be this henpecked? Are you going to be the henpecked king? Are you going to let your advisors, your people around you, push you in directions you want to go? I think that starts to be really interesting. I think you start to see where we're going with Fable, and you start to see with these big steps. Or are you going to be the sort of queen that is going to be a bigger tyrant? I think that is again very interesting. So, what does all this mean? Well, we want you to be king or queen, we want you to be ruler, but we're not going to give it to you straight away. In fact, half of the game, half of Fable 3 is going to be set in something we call the journey to rule. You actually start as the son or daughter from your Fable 2 save game. That's where you start. Yes, we are going to base that son and daughter on what your Fable 2 save game was like. So you're going to inherit your past indiscretions. And your Albion is ruled, I'm not going to spoil the story, but it is ruled by a tyrant. And one of your jobs is to go out and gain support and start a revolution. And this still happens in the world today. I mean, we pick up the newspaper all the time, and here are these revolutionaries trying to overthrow the tyranny of whether it be, the Middle East or wherever it is. I mean, it is very much exists in today's world. And we've really been inspired by that. We've really been inspired, by people like, Joan of Arc and, people through history, whether they be, a character like Richard III out of Shakespeare, or whether they be Genghis Khan, or whether they be Abraham Lincoln or Robespierre. We've really been inspired by this idea that you are going to grab all the terrible things that happen in the world, and you're going to take the factions with you, and you're going to lead a revolution. And ultimately, you're going to overthrow that terrible tyrant who rules Albion. But to do that, you're going to have to make some promises. You're going to have to promise some things to these people who are going to be following you. Just like our politicians, when they actually stand up and try and get elected, they'll promise anything. With like English politicians, they'll promise double anything. And, I think that's a very interesting thing. Why can't we give this to the player? Why can't we, give this, of course I'm going to, eradicate your poverty. Of course I'll make your people more important. Of course when I'm king or queen, I'll let you be in my court. But here's the thing, and here's the thing that's really interesting. Are you going to keep those promises? When you find out that when you rule, when halfway through the game, when you're destined to sit on that throne and rule, are you going to keep those promises? Are you going to be able to keep those promises? Because just like many politicians in today's world, they seem to just age dramatically as soon as they gain power. You know, I look at Obama, and he's not looking as fresh-faced as he was, is he? Let's be honest about it. He looks a little bit haggard now. It's as if, you know, the truth has been revealed to him. And, you know, the world expects, you know, and in England and all over the world, they expect so much from our leaders. Again, why don't we give that to the player? Why don't we allow the player to start to decide on which of those promises that we're going to keep? So that's very important to me. It's what's important as well is that you're going to see all sorts of injustices on the road to your rule. And I really want people who play this game to, you know, go into a community and think, oh, this is terrible. I'm going to totally eradicate that when I'm king or queen. And then realise there is perhaps a reason that the world is like that. And I think this is very interesting for the player. Let's move on. So once you rule, you're still a hero ruler. You're very much like the captain in Star Trek. You know, whether it be Picard or whether it be Kirk, they were always sort of having to go down to the planet's surface and sort things out yourself. It's very much the same. So after you, in the journey to rule, you're still a hero. You're still gaining support of the factions. You're having to fight very much like what you did in Fable 1, but that doesn't change when you become ruler. You can still lead your people in battle. You can still, you know, go and visit and have a royal visit to certain places within Albion. And then, you know, it's very much how Queen Victoria in England ran her rule. She was forever going around and visiting people. I'm not saying that Queen Victoria had a, you know, big sword and plate armour. She wasn't quite like that, but she certainly went out to the people. She is still there. But where you are does make things better, and you must, of course, decide after you know the truth which of these promises you're going to keep, and what you're going to be doing with your kingdom's gold. Now, one of the things that you can do with all this gold in your treasure chamber is you can decide where to allocate it. You know, again, you may have seen these injustices that are out there while you're on the journey to rule, but you may say, well, I'm going to build up a certain region, or, you know, these people were really poor. I'm going to visit those people. I'm going to, you know, give them money. I'm going to let them off of all taxes. And we were inspired by some of these images. Now, this image is very, you know, it's a very beautiful scene, and it's very lovely, but there's a lot of wealth here. Now, what are you going to do with that? With that land that's there, are you going to just let that wealth exist there? Or, you know, this is basically one person's back garden. And you should recognise certain things from this concept shot. In fact, this is a region called Bower Lake. And you can recognise the old Hero Hill here. But there's a new house there. What are you going to do with that? Some things are going to happen now, which again are going to pull things up in your rule. Let's move to the next slide. The other thing is about the land of Albion, you know, 50 years has moved on, it's got a lot more industrial, Bowerstone has continued to grow, and just like in England and many European cities, you know, that's when poverty really came in. You've now got industrial districts, and those industrial districts is where a lot of poverty, a lot of injustice, a lot of crime takes place. What are you going to do about that? You know, what are you going to do about some fundamental questions in this land? I mean, some of your decisions may well turn this into far more of a utopian place, because we are bringing back and we're doing far more of these things called dynamic regions. The idea that your decisions can change the course of the whole land. I think it was good in Fable 2, but in Fable 3, once you're king, it really starts making sense. If you start overtaxing those regions, then you're going to see a big difference. What are you going to do with your castle? Are you going to build it up? Are you going to develop it? Are you going to expand it? Are you going to spend the hard-earned money on making it more beautiful? Certainly your spouse is going to want you to. Or are you going to let it go to wreck and ruin a little bit and spend the money on the poor? I think, again, those questions are really strong. And it's not just Albion this time. A very good portion of this game is set in places that you've never seen before. And I'm not going to say much about this. The only thing is, remember that line, expect the unexpected. Don't expect that you've seen everything of Albion. In fact, Albion is just one small continent in the world of Fable. And we'll be unveiling more of that world in Fable 3 for absolutely for sure. So, there's the story. The next thing is that I'd like to just share with you is some of the efforts that we're going to make this dramatic. Now, Fable 2, I think there were some memorable moments in the Fable 2 story, but I think we were still learning the art of what we were trying to do. And what we really want to get to is, and I'm sure every developer says this, we want to make a memorable story. That's what every single developer says. But this time, for me, we really are taking it seriously, and we've taken very new steps, and I'm not sure I've heard of anybody taking similar steps before. So firstly, we've been inspired by a lot of historic events. We've gone through revolutionaries and leaders and kings and queens through history throughout the world. I mean, for example, there's an amazing, incredible tale. If anyone is interested, look up at the tale of what's happened in Oman, in the Middle East, in the last 100 years. It's absolutely fascinating. It almost fits perfectly what we're trying to do. There was these two brothers that were, literally one brother seemed to be, wanting to hold Oman back, and this other brother rebelled and overthrew the older brother. I mean, it was like a story in itself. You really have to look at some plays of Shakespeare to see some great inspiration. Some of the kings and queens in England and France, and indeed in Germany, some of the emperors. I think it's fantastic inspiration. And I tell you what, when you actually start investigating that, the amount of intrigue, backstabbing, just terrible events that went on over the last 1,000 years just in Europe is almost unbelievable. And so, getting that into the drama of the story is really important. But the big problem that games have got, time and time again, especially with something like Fable, it's such a big, huge, massive game full of regions, full of free-flowing game mechanics and freedom for the player. The big problem we have is seeing the story early enough. And in Fable 1 and Fable 2, one of the reasons we didn't quite get to that drama was simply we weren't able to see the story until the game was almost finished. And which is a little bit crazy, really, when you think about it, not being able to hear the voices or see what a performance is like. So what we've been doing is experimenting with a new way of seeing the story earlier. So what we did was we did something called staging. We wrote the story, we did all the scripts of the story, it's a huge, massive story, and then we went to a film studio called Shepperton, where we hired a big soundstage, bigger than this room. We got a whole load of actors and actresses in, and a proper professional director, and we started acting out the entirety of the story. And I want to just share some moments of this with you now, and just say why, as a designer, that is so important. So here we are.
Judgment of this Fairfax Castle servant will now commence. The subject
this is one of the scenes from Fable 3.
Just let me go
And what was so interesting about this scene is that us as designers and scriptwriters had written it one way, where I'm going to give you this character's name and spoil it, but where this character was very much pacing and walking around. But the staging and what some of the ad-libbing that was going on from the actors enabled us to do was to really recast the whole scene. Now, while we're doing this, we have cameras, and these cameras are simulating in-game cameras. We have people like Mark Hill rewriting the dialogue as we go, as we were inspired by this. And we've been doing this for weeks and weeks, trying to get to the heart of this story. And this is very, very important, especially when you think that our story isn't just one thread. It's actually branches and merges, and there's lots of choices, and there's lots of consequences, and we have to get to the centre of that as quickly as we possibly can. And, you know, just being able to see a camera this close, you know, do we want to have this in-game? Do we want to have the ability to get cameras that close? We've got the look-at trigger, if you remember, from Fable 2. We can still have that look-at, but that should be a lot more meaningful than it has been before. So all of this staging has taken place. That staging video then goes back to the animators, back to the gameplay scripters. They're inspired to balance around that, and we found that a fantastic inspirational thing. And I think because of this, because again we're using some of the talent, voice talent that you have from Fable 2, we're using again in Fable 3, we're getting some new voice talent as well. I'm really beginning to get a lot more confident that the story can be truly, truly dramatic. But that's the story side. Let me just touch very, very briefly on a couple of new gameplay mechanics. The first thing I want to talk about is, you know, I know what you're thinking out there, you press people, because you're sneaky people. You're probably thinking, are they actually going to be making RTS then? You know, is when you're king, are you going to be sort of adjusting taxes and sending armors out? No, don't think of that. What we are doing when you're king, we're introducing this new mechanic. And this new mechanic, I'm going to tell you what it is, but I'm not going to tell you exactly how it's implemented. It's something called judgments. Now here's the thing. Being able to be king, you should be able to say, I judge you. I'm going to judge you. I want you to defend yourself against this judgment. And that's what we've got, this totally new game mechanic called judgments. It's the ability for people to come before you if you're in your throne room, or indeed if you're out with the people, to come before you and you say, right, I'm going to judge you now. And they have to literally say, you know, what's happening. Let's take an example. This example isn't in the game, but this example I hope is going to inspire you. So you're in your throne room and then someone storms in and says, Sire, we've just caught this girl stealing food. You can then go into what's called a judgment. You can listen to this girl, listen to the person saying, you know, the cook saying, oh, you know, I was there and she stole some food and bread, and, you know, we've got to set an example of this because we can't have everybody coming in and stealing from your kitchens. At any time during this, you can say, I want to go and investigate this myself. Or you can say, right, I've heard enough. Right, it's time for me to pass the judgment now. It's time for me to decide on the fate. So you've got kind of the evidence first of all, then the decision, then we know what's going to happen, and the fate section. Or you could continue and the little girl would say, oh, you know, my family is starving and I've got to have some food, and you can listen to her case. And again, at any time you can go out and you could go and visit her family. Or you could go to the kitchens, and indeed, during any time of this, right, I've had enough of this, I'm going to pass judgment. It's kind of a new way of actually getting quests, this. You can think of it that way. And then once you've said, right, I've heard enough, you then have a choice of what you're going to do. Are you going to, you know, go down to your treasure rooms and throw her a handful of gold? Are you going to say, well, stealing is stealing after all? Let's just dispatch with her, throw in the dungeons. May not be terribly popular, that decision, but there you go. Or you could say, you know, okay, let's just let her off. And this is all about you being ruler, you feeling power and feeling the ability to actually pass judgments on the land. And think of those judgments, everything from the most trivial crust of bread being stolen, to, indeed, huge countrywide thing. Shall we go to war rather than spy you and think that way? So judgments are a completely new mechanic. The other new mechanic that we've got is called touch. And this was really important, and this idea of touch came about from you being ruler. And we were thinking about the old expression system in Fable, and many of you journalists parodied this old expression system of where, when you're doing an expression, you can dance on the spot. I was going to do it then, but I'm going to now. You could break wind, which us English people find enormously funny, and we probably sold 20% more copies just because of that. Germans don't find it funny at all, quite understandably. And, that was fine. And we'd done 50 or 60 of these expressions, and they were involving doing chicken dances. And we were kind of thinking, well, should we do expressions with Fable 3? I mean, now you're king. It's not really going to be applicable doing the Michael Jackson moonwalk on your throne. I mean, it's funny, it's going to make people laugh, but you're not going to feel that sense of power. So we started experimenting with something called touch. And that is the ability, the interesting thing, is in Fable 1 and Fable 2, and in many, many games for me, the main character feels completely detached from the world. It's very, very rare that you see game characters, physically touching people. And certainly in Fable 2, okay, you could stroke your dog, but it didn't really feel like you had a connection. Well, why don't we change that in Fable 3? So, let's give you this example. Let's say when you're wooing somebody, which was funny and charming that you could do a dance in front of the woman and she would kind of fall in love with you instantly, but it really wasn't what I would call gameplay. Well, now we've got this new system of touching. So when you first meet someone, sure enough, you can shake their hand, or you can refuse to shake their hand. Later on, you earn the right to turn that shaking hand into a hug. Later on, that hug can turn into an embrace. And later on, you can earn a full passionate snog. Then I won't tell you where it leads to, but you don't need to use too much of your imagination as to where this touch mechanic can lead to. I'm not saying there's cupping, by the way, but there is that feeling of embracing and touching, which is so important. And once we've got that, suddenly you start to feel much more connected. Imagine this scenario. Imagine you come into your throne room and you're passing judgment and your son or daughter storms into the room and says, Daddy, look, I've got a new toy castle. And imagine being able to reach out, hold your arms out and embrace that child, your child. How does that make you feel? That is such a human emotion. So we were installing this one-touch mechanic. But it doesn't stop there, because once we had that touch idea, there's another magical thing that happened, and it's called dynamic touch. And what dynamic touch enables you to do is enables you to, at any time, to reach out and touch someone, to hold someone's hand, to pull them along, to walk side by side, to be pulled by them, to be able to take the person that you love onto the top of a cliff top and hold their hand and look at the sunset. To be able to, and I want you to leave you with this thought, and again, this is all about being ruler, it's all about touching people as ruler and how that makes you feel, but it's also about moments like this. Imagine hearing the cries from a young child in the house. And you, as a hero, as a ruler, or even on the journey to rule, you storm into that house to save that child. Now, in Fable 1 and Fable 2, you could rush up and you'd go up to this child and it would come up on screen saying, press A to save the child. Yeah, that's not too good, really, is it? Once you've got dynamic touch, rushing up to that child, grabbing them by the hand, then pulling against you because they're too frightened of the flames. You getting, part way through the burning house collapses. They say, no, I can't go any further. You using dynamic touch to cuddle them and reassure them, again pulling them out of the situation, and then eventually being able to pick them up and hold them in your arms and run through the door to everyone outside, seeing how amazing you are. You saved this child. That's more like this sense of emotion that we want. Being able to touch people as ruler and see how they react, that's more what we want. So there's some little clues of those gameplay mechanics. Now I'm gonna tease you with how we're doing this. I think it's a pretty big thing on the touch mechanic, and that's only one tiny sliver of the new gameplay that we're going to be unveiling. So that's not the big thing, the big puzzle I set you out. So Fable 3 will be coming out in 2010. Don't expect it too early in 2010. In 2010 on the 360, and we're still working very, very hard on Milo and Kate. Really, that's the end of my announcements. The big announcement is Fable 3. Really, please, again, judge us on how much more we introduce into Fable, and please enjoy the sense of power that we're going to give you with Fable 3. Thank you very much.